Hey, what's up, y'all? And of course, welcome back to another Alternative Factuals video. So in this video, we're going to be covering biggest mistakes, the biggest failures of the Black Lightning TV show. Now, to be honest with you, a lot of this stuff, I won't say a lot of the stuff, but maybe some of the stuff on this list, I personally don't necessarily agree with, but after doing some research, I do see that this was a part of the failings of the show, but also some of these will be kind of my opinion. I'm going to let you know some of the mistakes I think they made while kind of making the show and how they could have made it better or made some different choices in order to get better results out of these so-called mistakes or whatever you decide you want to call them. But if you want to be sure to keep up with videos like this and keep up with content like this, be sure to like, share, and of course subscribe. Leave your comments down below. Make sure you share videos like this. Make sure you get all this information all around so that way we can all have these conversations week after week. And without further possible ado, let's kind of just dive into today's video. So I will say the first mistake, number one, that they did with Black Lightning is they pretty much destroyed a lot of the female characters. Now let me break this down. This is a combination of my opinion with the combination of other people's opinion and how they felt about characters like Lynn and Jennifer and Anissa, where Jennifer, I like her character. I like the premise of she's a teenage girl, she's adapting. Not only did she get powers during a time in her life when she's trying to actually figure herself out, but also it seems like she was the most powerful, which was a pretty dope route because not only did she kind of get interrupted, she basically had no equal in terms of how much power she was able to manifest, which in itself was an interesting perspective, and I kind of thought that was a nice take, even though I didn't completely enjoy it all the time. And then number two, Anissa started off pretty cool, but she was ridiculously headstrong with and even still, I know she's like, she's supposed to be a strong woman. I get that, she don't tolerate no one's crap at all. I respect it, hard body I do, but one of the biggest issues was that she kind of did it to a point where it worked against her in many different scenarios in the show, and a couple of them almost cost her life. And then three, in this kind of one section, is Lynn. Lynn started off as someone who was already kind of on the unreasonable end, where, I get it, your husband was a superhero and you couldn't deal with the fact that he was coming home, badly hurt. Even though he does have a healing factor, you couldn't deal with it, and then you got divorced, and then he kind of stopped being that superhero for a pretty long time. And then at the end of the day, he came back to being Black Lightning at her request, and then it seemed like no matter what he did or didn't do, she was just never satisfied. And that's a very frustrating character, especially when she's a main character, because it seems like she never wants anybody else but her to be right. She has to feel like she's relevant, and she made a lot of mistakes simply because she herself was very insecure, which in itself is not the problem. It's the fact that she tried to always push her insecurities onto other people like Jefferson, even sometimes her kids and other people. And she kind of did the same things that she kind of went after Jefferson about in some cases. So that was very annoying when it came to like a lot of their female characters. I'm not getting into every single female character, but that's just number one. Number two, I feel like the show was a little bit of a misdirect when it comes to the show being called Black Lightning. Now, the show was supposed to be about him, Jefferson Pierce, Black Lightning, and his ability to manipulate the electromagnetic field. Well, in reality, the show primarily was focused more on his kids and his family dynamic than more or less him. I mean, he was the focus in terms of his choices had the biggest impact on his family, but in reality, it was like setting up something else outside of him, because in terms of Jefferson himself, it seems like we didn't actually get much progression of his character. We did move forward with things and we did get some resolution when it came to things, but in terms of some of the things that held him back emotionally and mentally, it never really evolved or kind of moved or went anywhere else until the absolute last minute, which I think is kind of a poor way to go about it. Each season should kind of be treated as a way to get over a very specific hurdle that holds him back and kind of allows him to excel as a hero. Now, also that includes the fact that usually when it comes to comic books or cartoons or anything superhero related, usually getting over emotional and mental hurdles usually increase your power, because most of the time these hurdles are usually blocks that you put in your own mind because of your clear perspective on a situation that has been holding you back for however many X amount of years, months, whatever the case may be. Your biggest flaws, and usually the thing that's holding you back the most, is yourself and what you've dealt with. You can apply this concept to when you watch the TV show The Flash. The show is an absolute train wreck, but the reason Barry keeps getting faster pretty much essentially every season is because there's something for him to overcome. Now, sometimes the things he overcomes is kind of, redundant, pointless, and probably has been done before in some variation of it, but nonetheless, the hurdle has been overcome, and then he can continue to evolve and get stronger as a hero, which leads me to point number 3. Now, even though emotionally and mentally, Black Lightning never progressed, he never also progressed when it comes to his actual powers. We did get to see some changes in his abilities, but nonetheless, it didn't increase his power level. It just showed he was able to use his powers with a little bit more finesse. Like, for example, him being able to wipe someone's mind by blasting electricity through his own eyes. That's more of a finesse of his abilities than it is an actual expansion of his powers and his power set. One of the things that they hinted at the last season, which got on my nerves with a passion, is that they hinted that the more angry he got, his eyes would change into this really, really dark purple. And then it was like they teased it, but then they never fully gave into it, which would kind of go towards where the comic book would go. Black Lightning was most powerful when he was angry. That was usually when that literal Black Lightning would come out of his system and he would just start washing people. And he is, when it comes to the totality of his power, prime Black Lightning, he is someone you don't want to have on your bad side. Even Superman actually knows for a fact if he needs to take Jefferson out, he needs to take him out before he reaches his full peak, before he gets angry. So I know they probably didn't want to take that route because they didn't want the angry black man trope, but they pretty much was hovering on it for the last 2.5 seasons before the show was over. So they might as well should have just dove deeper into it and gave the audience what they wanted. Black Lightning becoming a stronger version of himself, even if it was temporary and it's only a state that he uses as a last resort. But that also I kind of want to talk about is that I think the show itself, I didn't like how his powers were so limited, which leads me to my 4th point, where it's essentially, yeah, his powers never grew, but then Jennifer was the most powerful. And the whole reasoning they didn't make Black Lightning so powerful was because, oh, we don't want him to be able to resolve a lot of his problems so quickly. But then you make another main character more powerful than he is, and then she's able to essentially do the same things that he would have been able to do if he would have had the same powers. Now, I get the first season, her powers are discovered, and then she's kind of just building up her strength for the first 2 seasons. By the time you get to season 3, though, she's pretty much this unstoppable force of nature. The only person who was able to go toe to toe with her was essentially Gravedigger, who had multiple abilities on his side just to try and counter her powers. And even then, he didn't necessarily full-blown outright defeat her in a pure power combat kind of fashion. He had to finesse her, trick her a little bit into putting her guard down just for a half a second in order to take advantage of the situation to kind of just take her out of the game for the moment. But no one could match the physical output she was able to generate, and she was still growing as an energy being. So that was one of my biggest complaints. Why not make Black Lightning that powerful when you have Jennifer that powerful? And I thought the whole point was so that way problems and your villains couldn't be defeated easily, when Jennifer did exactly that. No one can really step in the ring with her. And let's just get to my final point of the reason why I think Black Lightning overall just failed. And the biggest issue, bigger than all the things that I've mentioned right now, is the simple fact that the show was a little stagnant at times, where Tobias was the villain essentially for 3 out of 4 of the seasons. And even if he wasn't directly involved with something, he was always this big prize that Black Lightning was trying to achieve. And I understand the reason why, because Tobias killed his father, and Tobias had plenty of ties into Freeland. I understand that. That's perfectly fine. I get why he is the way he is. But if you're going to do that, you should introduce more villains and then build up to him being this final boss. Let's say if the show ran for another 3 more seasons, where he could be the end game. Like, okay, the first season was Tobias. Second season, it was kind of Tobias still. Third season, that's when we get the ASA and the whole Gravedigger. I actually liked that season because it was something different. The government itself was a part of the problem. The Gravedigger and the whole metahuman situation, and him being related to one of the primary and more one of the first official on record metahumans on record, made things kind of make sense in terms of his powers and the reason why his kids and himself have stable abilities. It made sense. But then the 4th season, you go back to Tobias. 3 out of 4 seasons is Tobias. Like, what more can you do for a dude who has super strength and, you know, he's pretty much just a political thug? Like, I get it, he was ruthless, he was out of control, but Tobias can play the long game. He has done so in the comics. He can play long game. But the thing is, they just wanted him to be in the forefront of this battle, where they could have took their time, built up Black Lightning, built up his family, made him more powerful, made Jennifer more powerful, made Anissa more powerful, made Lynn more suitable to go toe to toe with the resources of Tobias. Even they can make Gambino, you know, more suitable to go against Tobias and what he's capable of. So let's say by the time they get to about season 7 or season 8, they could have actually made this whole kind of family armada situation a reality, where it's like they're untouchable. Tobias thought that everything was laid out perfectly. You could find out after 7 seasons that even though he was not in the show, like in terms of physically there, he was actually moving pieces in order to take Black Lightning off the board. But because of the challenges that he put in front of the family, they not only learned, but they evolved and they became more powerful and stronger emotionally, mentally, and physically. And then he could have just been the end game, and it would have just been him versus them without him having to be there every single season. But let me know in the comments down below what you think about this. Do you feel like the reasons I've listed are legitimate complaints or legitimate things that made the show very difficult to watch? Let me know. And if you're new to the channel, like I said, like, share, and of course subscribe so you can get more content like this. And I'll see you in the next video for this week. Peace out.